Imagine walking down a familiar street, the scent of fresh bread from the corner bakery brushing against your senses, children laughing in the distance, and the soft hum of life moving gently around you. But there's a weight in your chest, a mixture of anticipation and unease, because though everything seems the same, you know that nothing will ever be the same again. This is the story of a soldier returning home. Not just a soldier of battles fought on foreign soil, but a traveler of the human heart, carrying the invisible scars of what he has seen, heard, and endured. Each step toward home is a step into a world that feels both intimately familiar and disorientingly strange. He sees the old oak at the corner of the street, its branches stretching wide as they always had. A place he once leaned against, dreaming about the future that seemed certain. And yet now, the past and present clash in an almost unbearable silence. The world moves on, indifferent, as if it has waited for him and yet will never pause. There is a moment, fleeting and sharp, when the eyes meet those of his family across the yard. A mother, a father, a sibling, people who have remained tethered to life as he knew it before the war pulled him into its chaotic embrace. Joy and relief mingle with a strange pang of alienation, because he knows that the man returning is not quite the same as the one who left. War, in all its darkness, strips away the illusions of permanence. The soldier had imagined that home would be untouched, that the familiar streets and faces would anchor him back to the world he once knew. But life does not pause, even for the weary traveler. Children have grown, neighbors have changed. Even the house itself seems to have settled into a rhythm that no longer waits for him. In that quiet confrontation with reality, he feels a flicker of understanding, a whisper of an ancient truth he had only glimpsed in fragments during long nights beneath foreign skies. The world is impermanent. Nothing, not joy, not sorrow, not even the life he once held as constant, remains untouched by change. And it is here, in this delicate space between recognition and loss, that the first lesson begins to emerge. Impermanence is not something to fear. It is the very fabric of life, the invisible current beneath every heartbeat, every step, every glance. It shapes the way we love, the way we grieve, and the way we return over and over again to ourselves. As he walks through the familiar doorway, the soldier senses that home is more than a place. It is not merely walls or a roof, but a living tapestry of moments, fragile and fleeting, each one urging him to be present. He begins to understand that the journey of returning is not measured in miles, but in awareness, in the willingness to see the ordinary with the extraordinary eyes of one who has witnessed the fragility of all things. The first morning back, he sits quietly at the kitchen table, a cup of tea warming his hands. Outside, the world carries on, unaware of his battles, unaware of the silent transformation that has begun. And in this gentle, almost imperceptible moment, he realizes that to return home is not only to reconnect with what was lost, it is to step fully into the impermanence of life, to meet each fleeting moment with openness, humility, and a quiet reverence. The story of a soldier returning is, in many ways, a story of all of us. We all face moments when the ground shifts beneath our feet, when familiar landscapes transform, and when we must reconcile who we were with who we have become. And it is in these moments, subtle yet profound, that we encounter the first truth of existence. Nothing lasts forever, and in that truth lies both challenge and freedom. Returning home was only the beginning. Beneath the quiet streets, the laughter of children, and the gentle rhythm of life, the soldier carried a weight unseen by others, a weight forged in fire, loss, and relentless uncertainty. Each memory pressed against his chest like a phantom demanding attention, refusing to be ignored. War had a way of distorting time. Days blurred into nights, and nights stretched into eternities where fear was the only companion. He remembered the deafening roar of artillery, the acrid scent of smoke that never left his clothes, and the faces of those who would not return. These memories were not confined to the battlefield. They seeped into every corner of his mind, shadowing the simplest moments with unease. Walking through his hometown, he found himself startled by the ordinary. A child's laughter on the street corner echoed too sharply, reminding him of screams in foreign lands. The smell of freshly baked bread brought a pang of longing for something he had lost but could not name. Even the sunlight felt intrusive, as though the world were too bright, too vivid for someone who had stared into darkness for so long. And yet, there was no one to explain this weight to. Words failed him. How could he convey the quiet terror, the endless tension, and the gnawing ache of survival to those who had been safe all along? The soldier realized that some burdens could not be shared. Some battles were internal, fought far from the eyes of others, in the secret chambers of memory where pain and gratitude intertwined. Here, in the solitude of his own mind, the soldier encountered a truth that had been whispered to him only in fragments before. Life is inherently uncertain, fragile, and fleeting. In Buddhist terms, this is dukkha, the pervasive sense of suffering that arises from attachment and desire. War had stripped him bare, revealing not only the fragility of life, but also the illusions he once clung to: certainty, permanence, and control. He remembered a comrade, a friend who laughed as if life were eternal, who fell beside him in an instant. One moment they were alive, planning for the future, the next gone. And in that disappearance, in the raw confrontation with the impermanence of life, the soldier felt the first stirrings of wisdom, wisdom born not from comfort, but from the harsh clarity of reality. But insight does not erase pain. Each step through familiar streets brought echoes of the battlefield, reminders that his mind had not yet come home even as his body had. The weight of war was not measured in physical scars alone. It lived in restless nights, in sudden flashbacks, in the quiet moments when laughter felt distant, and tears seemed to belong to another person entirely. And yet, even in the shadow of this burden, there were glimpses of resilience. The soldier noticed the small kindnesses around him: a neighbor offering a smile, a stranger holding a door, the warmth of family gathered for a simple meal. These moments were fleeting, yet they were powerful reminders that life continues, even after devastation, even after loss. In those moments, he began to understand that the weight of war was not a punishment or a curse. It was a teacher. It revealed the illusions we hold, the attachments we cling to, and the impermanent nature of all things. It demanded presence, patience, and courage. And most importantly, it invited him to step fully into life, aware of its fragility, yet willing to embrace it with open arms. The soldier realized that the true battle was not outside on distant soil, but within. Each memory, each fear, each pang of longing was an opportunity to cultivate awareness, compassion, and understanding. The weight of war was heavy, yes, but it was also a doorway. A doorway to seeing the world as it is, impermanent, unpredictable, yet profoundly beautiful in its fleetingness. And so he began to walk again, not away from the memories, but through them. Not in denial of the pain, but in acknowledgement of its presence. With each step he felt a subtle shift, a quiet stirring of something deep inside, a resilience, a mindfulness, a nascent acceptance that life, in all its impermanence, still holds moments worth embracing. Returning home is often imagined as a single moment, a door opening, a familiar face, a hug that mends everything. Yet for the soldier, home was not a destination. It was a delicate, shifting landscape he had to navigate slowly, one breath at a time. As he stepped through the front gate, the familiar sights and sounds should have felt comforting. Instead, there was a strange tension, a sense of displacement. The house looked the same, yet the air seemed different, alive with the passage of time. The walls held memories, yes, but they also held moments he had missed. Birthdays, quiet evenings, laughter that had moved on without him. Family greeted him with smiles that were warm but slightly strained, as if they too were learning how to recognize the person who had returned. They saw the soldier's body, but the mind and heart were occupied with distant battles, both literal and emotional. Conversations stumbled awkwardly over the chasms of shared experiences they could not bridge. The soldier felt both gratitude and alienation, gratitude for survival, for seeing these familiar faces again. Alienation because the world he had left behind was no longer entirely his own. It had continued without pause, indifferent to the transformations he had endured. And here, in this delicate tension, he discovered another layer of impermanence, the subtle, often unnoticed changes that accumulate while life moves forward. He wandered through familiar rooms, touching surfaces with reverence, noticing details he had once taken for granted. The grooves in the wooden floor, the faded photograph on the mantel, the gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Each object carried history, each corner held echoes of laughter and sorrow. And yet, even as he observed these remnants of the past, he realized that they were not static. They had aged, shifted, grown just as he had. Outside, the garden had grown wilder, the flowers slightly different from memory. The soldier knelt to touch the soil, feeling its texture, sensing the life pulsing beneath. It was a reminder that home is alive, not frozen, that the present, ever-changing, cannot be reclaimed in exact form. He found solace in simple routines, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, listening to the rhythm of life outside. Slowly, he began to see that reconnecting with home was not about restoring what once was, but about embracing what had become. It required patience, openness, and the gentle release of expectations. In these quiet moments, the soldier started to understand another teaching of impermanence. The self he had been before the war no longer existed in the same form. The world around him had moved forward, indifferent, yet full of subtle invitations to re-engage. Life demanded that he meet it where it was, not where he remembered it to be. And so, he began to participate, not as a returning hero with stories to impress, but as a witness to life unfolding in its ordinary beauty. He listened more than he spoke, observed more than he judged, and slowly he discovered that presence was the key to reconnecting. To truly be home was to inhabit each moment fully, aware of its fleetingness, and yet grateful for the continuity that impermanence allowed. There were challenges, of course. Old patterns of thought, the haunting echoes of the battlefield, and the occasional waves of loneliness reminded him that reintegration was a process, not an instant. But with mindfulness, patience, and small acts of engagement, he found a rhythm, a delicate dance between memory and presence, past and future, pain and gratitude. Reconnecting with home was teaching him the profound lesson that life, like the seasons, flows with its own momentum. Clinging to what was, resisting what is, or fearing what may come only obscures the richness of the present. In opening himself to each unfolding moment, the soldier discovered the subtle joy of impermanence, a joy not loud or dramatic, but deep, grounding, and transformative. And as he stepped into the garden one evening, watching the sun settle behind the familiar rooftops, he understood that home was not a place to conquer or a past to reclaim. It was a living, breathing reality that demanded attention, presence, and humility. And in embracing it, he felt the first true stirrings of peace, fragile yet undeniably real, like the soft glow of twilight over a world that continues, no matter what has been endured. Even in the calm of home, the soldier could not escape the shadows of the past. Memories arrived unannounced, like gusts of wind slipping through a cracked window, carrying with them the scents, sounds, and sensations of distant battlefields. A familiar street corner might suddenly transform into a trench. A child's laugh could echo like the shriek of an alarm. These moments were not nightmares. They were fragments of a reality he had lived, indelible and persistent. He would sit quietly in his room, a book unopened on his lap, as the past pressed forward with astonishing clarity. The faces of comrades lost lingered, some smiling, some frozen in moments of fear and courage. Each memory was a small, invisible weight, pressing against the chest, bending the spine of his consciousness in ways invisible to the outside world. Even the simple act of remembering carried contradictions, gratitude for having survived intertwined with guilt for having done so. Relief for returning home mingled with sorrow for those who never would. Every flash of memory was a lesson in impermanence. Life and death, joy and pain, presence and absence, all shifting, flowing, dissolving into one another. The soldier began to recognize a pattern. Memories were not enemies. They were reminders, sometimes harsh, sometimes gentle, of the fragility and preciousness of life. In Buddhist terms, these were manifestations of anicca, the truth of impermanence. Nothing remained fixed, not even his own mind, which had once felt invincible in the heat of survival, now vulnerable in the quiet of reflection. Yet understanding did not make the memories any easier to bear. A sudden clang of metal from the nearby workshop, or the crackle of leaves underfoot, could trigger a cascade of recollections, bringing the battlefield into the middle of a peaceful afternoon. In those moments, the soldier felt the duality of human experience. The external world could be tranquil, but the inner world remained tumultuous, a river of unbidden images and sensations. And still, there was a strange gift hidden within these lingering memories. Each recollection, though painful, was an invitation to presence. By witnessing the past without clinging or resisting, he discovered that he could observe suffering as it arises and let it pass without being consumed. This was the subtle power of mindfulness, the gentle art of being fully aware of what is, moment by moment, even when what is carries echoes of trauma. The soldier began to practice this quietly in ways almost imperceptible, breathing slowly while a memory surfaced, noticing the tension in his shoulders, acknowledging the pang in his chest. He did not try to chase the memory away, nor did he try to sink into it. He simply watched it as one might watch leaves drifting on a stream. In this simple observation, there was a shift. Pain became less commanding, less suffocating, less defining of who he was. And yet, memories were not mere shadows to endure, they were teachers. They revealed the impermanence of joy and sorrow alike, the transience of human connections, and the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. In witnessing the ghosts of the past, he began to glimpse the possibility of freedom, freedom from attachment, from fear, from the relentless pull of what had been. The soldier realized that memories, even the most haunting, were threads woven into the tapestry of his being. To deny them would be to deny life itself. To surrender to them entirely would be to lose oneself. Instead, he learned the delicate art of integration, letting memories inform, not imprison, teaching, not torturing, guiding, not dictating. In this quiet, reflective space, he discovered another lesson of impermanence. Just as the seasons change, just as the river flows and the sun rises and sets, so too do emotions, fears, and wounds. They arise, they linger, and they pass. And in their passing there is a space, a breath, a pause, a moment of clarity that allows the heart to expand, the mind to settle, and life to continue. The soldier stepped outside that evening, feeling the cool air brush his face, listening to the distant murmur of his neighborhood. Memories had not vanished. They never would. But he carried them differently now, not as chains, but as lanterns illuminating the path forward. Each recollection, each whisper of the past, was a reminder of what it meant to be alive, fragile, and profoundly human. As the days stretched on, the soldier began to notice a quiet tension beneath the calm rhythms of home. He had expected life to welcome him with open arms, to offer a world unchanged, familiar, and safe. Yet every step, every glance revealed the truth he had been avoiding. Nothing lasts forever. The streets, the house, even the people he loved, all had moved forward, shaped by time and circumstance, indifferent to his return. He had imagined that home would be an anchor, a constant to cling to, a place where the chaos of war could be washed away. But this illusion, so comforting in the mind, collided harshly with reality. The laughter of children, once a melody of familiarity, now highlighted what had changed. Friends had grown distant, routines had shifted, and the world hummed along its own course, oblivious to his hopes. It was a stark reminder that permanence is a fiction. Human life, and indeed the entire universe, flows in a current of constant change. Buddhist philosophy calls this truth anicca, the impermanence of all things. To cling to what was, to resist the inevitable shifts of life, is to invite suffering. And the soldier, carrying the weight of both past horrors and present expectations, understood this deeply. Yet, impermanence is not only a source of pain, it is a doorway to insight. In witnessing how life moves, transforms, and evolves, he began to see that attachment to permanence is what binds us to suffering. Every attempt to grasp at stability, every desire for life to remain unchanged, had only amplified his internal struggle. Even the small routines of daily life became mirrors of this lesson. He noticed the garden in his backyard, once meticulously tended by a parent's hands, now slightly overgrown. Flowers bloomed, faded, and gave way to new buds, a silent rhythm of creation and decay. He observed himself in the mirror, seeing subtle changes, lines etched into his face, the steadiness of his gaze that had once been untested, now tempered by experience. Nothing remained untouched, nothing stayed the same. And in this observation, a paradox emerged. The very truth that could have filled him with despair instead invited him to live more fully. If nothing lasts forever, then every moment, no matter how ordinary, carries profound significance. Each conversation, each gesture, each fleeting smile is a gift precisely because it cannot be preserved. The soldier began to feel the subtle liberation in this awareness, a freedom from clinging, a release from the burden of controlling what is uncontrollable. He started to apply this understanding in small, deliberate ways. He allowed himself to laugh without hesitation, to sit in silence without judgment, to embrace people without the expectation that moments would repeat. He learned to treasure presence itself, rather than the idea of permanence. The home he had imagined was not lost, it had simply transformed, and in transformation there was life, vibrancy, and even beauty. Yet illusions die slowly. Old habits of thought, the ingrained yearning for constancy, returned at unexpected moments, a sudden fear that a loved one might change, a fleeting anger that the world no longer matched memory. But each time the soldier met these feelings with mindfulness. He observed them, acknowledged them, and let them pass. In doing so, he realized that impermanence is not an enemy, but a teacher, guiding him toward a deeper engagement with reality. This lesson extended beyond the home. In the market, in the streets, in conversations with neighbors, he began to notice the subtle flows of life, how fortunes rise and fall, how joy and sorrow intermingle, how every human being navigates the delicate balance between change and continuity. And in these ordinary, fleeting encounters, the soldier found a profound resonance with the philosophy he had glimpsed in the aftermath of war. Life is a river, and trying to grasp it only leads to suffering. The illusion of permanence is seductive. It promises safety, predictability, and comfort. Yet the soldier had learned that it is in releasing this illusion, in opening the hands rather than clenching them, that one discovers the true richness of life. Change is not a threat. It is the essence of existence, a force that shapes, teaches, and ultimately liberates. As the sun dipped behind familiar rooftops, casting long shadows across the streets, he felt a quiet acceptance settling in. The home he had returned to was not a fixed point in space or time. It was alive, shifting, and impermanent, and in embracing that truth, he found a new kind of steadiness, one rooted not in resistance but in presence. The soldier had walked the streets of his hometown, observed the changes, and felt the subtle pull of impermanence. Yet, even as he accepted the fleeting nature of life around him, the turmoil inside remained. Memories of battle, loss, and survival continued to echo, sometimes quietly, sometimes like a storm raging in his chest. He realized that the peace he sought would not be found outside, not in the streets, the house, or even the smiles of loved ones. It would be found within. One morning he rose before the sun, carrying a small cushion to the quiet corner of his garden. The air was cool, filled with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. He settled down, folding his legs, resting his hands, and letting his eyes close. There was no rush, no expectation, only the simple act of sitting, breathing, and observing. At first, the mind resisted. Thoughts raced in like soldiers charging across a battlefield, memories of violence and fear, regrets and what-ifs. But with each breath he practiced the gentle art of noticing without clinging. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. He did not push the thoughts away. He did not judge them. He simply observed like a silent witness to the constant ebb and flow of consciousness. Slowly, a subtle shift occurred. The storm of the mind began to soften. Awareness, like a lantern in the dark, illuminated the spaces between thoughts, revealing a calm that had always been present but obscured by fear and attachment. He felt the rhythm of life within himself, the rise and fall of his chest, the steady beat of his heart, the quiet presence of being alive. In these moments, the soldier encountered the essence of mindfulness, the practice of fully inhabiting the present, not clinging to the past, not grasping for the future, but simply being. The battlefield had taught him the fragility of life. Now, mindfulness taught him the possibility of peace within that fragility. He recalled a lesson glimpsed during the war, amidst the chaos and fear. Life is impermanent, and yet each moment, no matter how fleeting, contains its own completeness. It was here in the stillness of the garden that he began to integrate this understanding. Each memory of loss, each pang of regret, no longer threatened to overwhelm him. Instead, they became teachers, reminders to return again and again to the present moment. The soldier also discovered compassion, starting with himself. He realized that much of his suffering had been compounded by self-judgment, the belief that he should have been stronger, braver, or less affected by the horrors he witnessed. With mindfulness came acceptance. He was human, fragile, and resilient, scarred and evolving. And in accepting this truth, a quiet warmth began to grow within him, a gentle kindness that extended outward to the world around him. This practice did not erase pain. Memories still surfaced, grief still came in waves, and fear still whispered in quiet moments. But the soldier had learned to meet these emotions differently, not as enemies to fight, but as signals to observe, understand, and let pass. He found that peace was not a permanent state, but a living, breathing quality, emerging in moments of awareness, in pauses between thoughts, in the quiet acceptance of what is. He began to notice the impact of this inner peace in daily life. Conversations with family became more attentive, moments with neighbors more present, and simple tasks, cooking, sweeping, walking, became meditative acts, opportunities to inhabit life fully. The world outside had not changed, but his perception of it had transformed. Where once he had seen disruption and impermanence as threats, he now saw them as invitations to deeper awareness and presence. And in this shift, the soldier began to experience a profound freedom. Freedom not from suffering, but from the compulsive resistance to it. Freedom not from memories, but from being defined by them. Freedom not from impermanence, but through embracing it moment by moment, breath by breath. In the quiet of his garden, he realized that inner peace is not a destination to reach, nor a treasure to be possessed. It is the subtle rhythm of life itself, waiting to be noticed. And in noticing it, even for a fleeting moment, the soldier discovered a truth that had been with him all along. The mind, when anchored in awareness, can return home, even after the most distant and harrowing journeys. Sitting quietly in his garden, the soldier began to notice patterns he had once overlooked, the subtle rhythms of life that unfold whether we acknowledge them or not. Flowers bloomed and withered, clouds drifted across the sky, and the river outside his window carried away leaves that had danced upon its surface only yesterday. Each movement, each passing moment, was a reminder that nothing remains fixed. Impermanence is not a distant concept, but the very texture of life itself. The soldier thought of the battlefield, where life and death existed side by side, where moments of joy were fleeting and terror was constant. Those experiences had impressed the truth of impermanence deeply upon him. Yet in the quiet of home, surrounded by peace, he began to see the subtler lessons not forced by danger, but offered gently by the ordinary flow of existence. Every conversation became a meditation, a neighbor's laughter, a child's question, Even the changing light on the wall reminded him that nothing lasts. Happiness, sorrow, youth, aging, love, loss, all were impermanent. This recognition, far from bringing despair, illuminated a path toward deeper freedom. By seeing clearly that all things arise, linger, and fade, he began to loosen the tight grip of expectation and attachment that had caused so much suffering. He realized that impermanence was not a barrier to joy, but a doorway to appreciation. Each smile, each touch, each fleeting moment gained weight, significance, and beauty precisely because it could not endure forever. The soldier began to cherish presence itself, not as a means to an end, but as the very essence of life. He understood that to cling, to resist, to wish things to remain unchanged, is to obscure the richness of what is here now. And yet, the lessons were not only about beauty. They were about resilience, compassion, and courage. Impermanence revealed the necessity of letting go, of fear, of resentment, of illusions of control. Each memory of loss, each fleeting moment of discomfort became an opportunity to practice release. By observing without clinging, the soldier discovered that suffering need not define him. It could teach him, mold him, and even deepen his capacity for empathy. The soldier also noticed how impermanence shapes relationships. Friendships, family bonds, and love are fragile, subject to the shifting tides of circumstance. To treasure these connections, he realized, requires not possession or control, but presence, care, and deep attention. He began to approach each encounter with mindfulness, aware that words, gestures, and moments cannot be preserved, but their impact can linger in memory, in heart, in quiet transformation. As days turned into weeks, the soldier practiced applying these lessons in subtle ways. A shared meal became an act of gratitude. A conversation with a neighbor became an exercise in listening. A moment of solitude in the garden became a reminder of the constant flow of life. Impermanence, once feared, became a companion, a guide, and a teacher, revealing the depth, fragility, and preciousness of each moment. Through these experiences, he began to understand a profound truth. The transience of life does not diminish it, it enriches it. To live fully is not to resist change, but to embrace it with awareness and courage. Every loss, every shift, every ending carries within it the seed of transformation, the possibility of growth, and the quiet beauty of being fully present. In the lessons of impermanence, the soldier discovered freedom, not freedom from suffering, nor freedom from loss, but freedom from the illusion that he could ever hold life in his hands. Life flows, moments pass, people change, and he too is changing. And in this ever-moving current, there is a space for peace, for clarity, and for the kind of gratitude that only arises when one sees the fleeting nature of everything. The soldier had spent months walking the quiet streets of his hometown, observing impermanence in the flowers, the children, and even in himself. Slowly, a realization began to dawn. These lessons he had learned were not meant to remain locked within his own heart. They were gifts, fragile and fleeting, meant to be shared, not hoarded. It began subtly. A neighbor asked about his time away, and instead of replying with the customary brief details, he spoke slowly, with care. He shared small reflections about how life moves like a river, how joy and sorrow come and go, and how the weight of memory can become a teacher rather than a burden. His words were simple, yet they carried the quiet authority of lived experience. The act of sharing did something remarkable. For the first time, he noticed the ripples his insights created. A friend nodded, eyes softening, as if a veil had been lifted. A stranger paused, leaning a little closer, listening to the rhythm of his voice. By giving voice to his understanding, the soldier realized that wisdom, like water, cannot be contained. It flows, shaping and nourishing wherever it reaches. In sharing, he discovered another truth of impermanence. People, too, are in flux. Just as he had changed since leaving the battlefield, so had those around him evolved in ways both visible and unseen. To offer insight, therefore, was not to instruct nor to impose, but to plant seeds that might take root when conditions were right, in the fertile soil of attentive hearts. He began to meet regularly with a small group in the community, simply listening at first, and then gradually offering reflections. Stories emerged, stories of loss, of fear, of hope, and in listening he found that he was no longer alone in carrying the weight of life's transience. Sharing wisdom became a form of communion, a recognition that suffering and insight are universal, that the human heart resonates across time, place, and circumstance. The soldier also noticed the subtle transformation within himself. Speaking aloud crystallized his understanding. Words gave shape to insight, and insight, in turn, deepened his sense of presence. Each conversation, each shared reflection became a mirror, reflecting not only the lessons he had learned, but also the universal patterns of impermanence and change. Through these interactions, he realized that impermanence was not merely a philosophical concept, it was a living practice. By speaking of it, by acknowledging change and fragility openly, he helped others see their own lives with fresh clarity. And in guiding others gently toward awareness, he found that wisdom is not a solitary pursuit. It is a shared flame, passing quietly from one heart to another, illuminating the path without forcing it. The soldier began to integrate these teachings into everyday encounters. A brief conversation at the market became an opportunity to remind someone of the fleeting nature of worry. A simple exchange with a friend turned into a gentle reflection on the beauty of transient moments. He discovered that wisdom does not require grand gestures. It is expressed in the ordinary, the unnoticed, the subtle. And in sharing, he felt a sense of purpose take root, a purpose born not of heroism, but of presence, humility, and connection. The lessons he had learned from impermanence, from memory, and from mindfulness were no longer abstract truths. They were living threads, woven into the fabric of his interactions, his home, and his community. Through the act of sharing, the soldier realized that the journey of returning home is not complete until the insights gained are offered outward, until the quiet lessons of impermanence touch other hearts. By giving voice to what he had learned, he found that wisdom is alive, not in isolation, but in connection, and that even the most fleeting moments can carry profound meaning when held with awareness and compassion. The soldier had returned, carried the weight of war, and gradually discovered the power of presence, mindfulness, and impermanence. Now he began to explore a subtler, deeper journey, not just returning to life, but living it differently, intentionally, consciously, and with open awareness. Every day became an opportunity for practice. Simple tasks, preparing a meal, tending the garden, walking through the town, were no longer mere routines. Each action was infused with attention, each moment a chance to observe the transient nature of life and the delicate interconnection of all things. The soldier learned that living fully does not require grand gestures. It requires awareness, patience, and compassion in the small details. He noticed the rhythm of his own mind. Thoughts arose and fell, emotions swelled and dissipated, and memories lingered only to pass. Instead of resisting these natural waves, he learned to ride them, understanding that life is not a static object to hold, but a flowing current to navigate with awareness. This was the essence of a new way of living, responding to life with presence, rather than reacting with clinging or aversion. In this new way of living, relationships took on new meaning. He listened more deeply to family and friends, noticing not just words but pauses, gestures, and unspoken feelings. Conflict was met with patience, anger with understanding, and joy with gratitude. Every interaction became an exercise in mindfulness, a reminder that all connections are impermanent and yet deeply precious. The soldier also embraced the rhythms of nature. He observed the changing seasons, the fleeting blooms of flowers, the movement of clouds, and the ebb and flow of the river. In witnessing these patterns, he saw reflected the impermanence and beauty of his own life. To live consciously was to participate in these cycles with respect and humility, recognizing that he, too, was part of the ever-changing tapestry of existence. Work, play, and rest became practices rather than mere obligations. He approached each task with intention, aware of the transient opportunity it represented. Even moments of discomfort, fatigue, pain, or worry were met with gentle acceptance, transforming obstacles into lessons in patience, compassion, and resilience. The soldier realized that peace is not a permanent state to achieve, but a living quality cultivated moment by moment, breath by breath, act by act. This approach extended beyond personal experience. By living consciously, he naturally inspired others. Friends, family, and neighbors noticed his calm presence, his attentive listening, and his quiet responsiveness to life's challenges. Without preaching, he demonstrated that a mindful life is not about escaping impermanence or suffering, but about engaging with them fully, with awareness, courage, and compassion. The soldier understood now that the new way of living was not a return to what he had known before the war. It was an evolution, a rebirth of sorts, a life lived in deep alignment with the truths he had come to see, that all things are impermanent, that suffering and joy coexist, and that the mind, when anchored in awareness, can cultivate freedom even amidst uncertainty. He began to see daily life as a meditation. Eating, walking, speaking, listening, everything became an opportunity to practice presence. Impermanence was no longer a threat but a guiding principle. Memories of the past were teachers, not tyrants. Challenges were invitations, not obstacles. And every fleeting moment was a chance to participate fully in the dance of life. In this new way of living, the soldier discovered something extraordinary. The world had not changed, yet everything had. He had changed. He had learned to navigate life not as a place to conquer or a time to reclaim, but as a flow to honor, moment by moment, with awareness, compassion, and gratitude. And in this awareness, he found the quiet, enduring joy of a life truly lived. The soldier had returned home carrying the weight of war, confronted the impermanence of life, and discovered the delicate art of presence. He had learned that memories, loss, and suffering are not enemies but teachers, that impermanence is not a threat but a guide, and that peace is not a destination but a living quality cultivated moment by moment. Yet even now, as he sat quietly in his garden, watching sunlight dance across the leaves, he knew that the journey was far from over. Life does not pause. Change continues, seasons shift, people come and go, and each day presents new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to practice mindfulness and compassion. The journey of living consciously, of embracing impermanence, and of cultivating inner peace is ongoing, without end, yet deeply fulfilling in every step. He reflected on the wisdom he had gathered along the way, the importance of observing life without clinging, the value of embracing each fleeting moment, and the transformative power of compassion, not only toward others but toward oneself. He realized that these truths are universal. They do not belong to one person, one place, or one lifetime. They are threads woven through the fabric of human experience, waiting to be noticed, practiced, and shared. The soldier thought of the people he had met, the friends, family, neighbors, and even strangers, whose lives intersected with his in subtle ways. Every encounter was a mirror, reflecting the truths he had discovered. And he understood that sharing wisdom is not about instructing or persuading. It is about offering presence, clarity, and the gentle illumination of possibility. Just as a lantern does not create the light but reveals what is already there, his awareness simply allowed others to see more clearly, to touch the beauty and fragility of life with mindful attention. And so, the journey continues. For the soldier, for all of us, life is an endless unfolding, a river that carries us through moments of joy and sorrow, certainty and doubt, presence and loss. The challenge is not to control the flow, but to navigate it with awareness, courage, and compassion. To live fully is to honor impermanence, to embrace vulnerability, and to cherish the preciousness of each moment. In the quiet of his garden, he smiled, not because the past had vanished, nor because the future was assured, but because he had discovered the simple, profound truth that life is alive, and he is alive within it. And in this awareness, each breath becomes a teacher, each step a meditation, and each day a canvas for mindful living. The soldier's journey reminds us all, we cannot escape impermanence, we cannot erase suffering, and we cannot predict the twists and turns of life. But we can choose presence over distraction, awareness over ignorance, and compassion over indifference. Life is fleeting, fragile, and beautiful, precisely because it cannot be held forever. And in this fleetingness lies the opportunity for profound wisdom, enduring peace, and the courage to live fully. The journey continues, not as a story with an ending, but as a living, breathing practice. Every moment offers a chance to return, to awaken, and to step fully into life, aware of its impermanence and open to its infinite possibilities. If this journey with the soldier and the lesson of impermanence resonated with you, take a moment to breathe, reflect, and let it settle in your heart. And if you wish to continue exploring the wisdom of Buddhism, mindful living, and the subtle truths that guide our lives, consider subscribing to ZenBuddhismWisdom. Here, we walk together, one moment, one breath, one lesson at a time. Join our community and let each video be a gentle reminder to embrace impermanence, cultivate inner peace, and live fully in the present.